Hello, I'm Keith Abell. I'm a pharmacist, wellness consultant, and founder of Healthy Lifestyle Champions. Just a brief background on myself. I've been a pharmacist now since 1995, and I've worked in many practice settings, including community pharmacy, home health pharmacy, hospital pharmacy, and as a consultant for long-term care pharmacy. In all those practice settings, I've seen one common thread. We're very good at managing diseases. However, other than the infectious diseases, we don't do a very good job at all at getting people healthier. Now, I became a pharmacist because I wanted to help people get better and overcome their medical conditions. Since it wasn't happening, about 10 years ago I began looking at other approaches to wellness, and I discovered that there are other ways that the big pharmaceutical companies hope we never discover. You see, the human body was divinely designed. When given the proper building blocks, that's all 90 essential nutrients, it will heal and repair itself. I want you to think about that a minute. When you cut your hand, you don't have to tell the body what to do. It already knows how to repair the cut. When you fracture a bone, there's no magic drug to heal it. The doctor supports the bone to prevent further damage, and your body heals itself. Well, given all 90 of the essential nutrients that the body needs at doses according to your body weight, you give your body all it needs to support and promote the body's ability to repair itself. I call these essential nutrients 90 for life because we need them all of our life to have a lifetime of disease-free living. Today we're going to be discussing weight management, why do diets fail, and how to have success. This is going to be an interesting look at weight management, why diets fail, and what we need to do to overcome those failures in order to have the success in managing one's weight. Now, I purposely use the words weight management because the primary goal is not just to lose weight, but also to keep it off. Throughout this video, we're going to explore what's led us to become one of the most obese people in recorded history. We're going to look into some of the different diet programs out there and discuss why aspects of the diets may or not work. Finally, we'll look at what needs to be done so people will not only have success with weight loss, but also how to keep the weight off once it is lost. Obesity is an epidemic in the United States. Over 65% of adults are considered overweight or obese. Since 1970, the obesity rate in children has actually tripled. As a result, for the first time in history, the life expectancy of today's youth is expected to be lower than that of their parents. The effect on the health from this epidemic is already being felt. Obesity increases the risk of diabetes by as much as 20 times. The diabetes rate has jumped 60% in the last 10 years. So why are we becoming so overweight? Well, the simple reason, we consume more calories than we burn. From 1970 to 1990, we've increased our caloric intake by 200 calories each day, which adds up to 1 extra pound of weight every 17 to 18 days. Couple that statistic with the fact that we are less active today than we were 30 years ago, and it's no wonder we're losing the battle of the bulge. But the cause of the problem just isn't an imbalance of calories consumed versus calories burned, because if it was, then dieting wouldn't fail. In a moment, we'll take a look at what's actually driving us to eat ourselves into obesity. Once we understand the cause and address it, we'll finally be able to manage our weight effectively and permanently. All the popular diet plans tend to fall into one of three categories. You have your low-fat diets, your low-carbohydrate diets, or the balanced diets. Briefly, we're going to discuss these three programs and what works and what doesn't work with each one. Now, the oldest and the most promoted by the medical community is the low-fat diet. Back in the first half of the last century, researchers theorized that high-fat diets caused obesity and cardiovascular problems. In fact, it's the same research that's led us down the path where we're obsessed with cholesterol levels and the idea that cholesterol causes cardiovascular problems. The first in the popular low-fat diet was the Ornish diet, or also known as the Mediterranean diet. Now, these low-fat and no-fat diets limit or even eliminate the fats and encourage the consumption of grains, fruits, and vegetables. In fact, the American Heart Association back in the 1950s through 1960s singled out overweight Americans, suggesting that they should eat less fat and substitute a substantial part of liquid vegetable oils in place of solid animal fats like butter and fatty meat. After more than 50 years of increasingly more and more restrictive fat content and now even zero-fat dieting, we're actually seeing a drastic rise in both cardiovascular conditions and obesity. The results of a long-term clinical trial of over 48,000 postmenopausal women published in 2006 in JAMA actually found that this type of diet does not significantly reduce the risk of heart disease or stroke, yet the medical establishment continues to promote this type of diet. On the other extreme are the low carbohydrate diets. Atkins is probably the most well known of these. The theory behind this type of diet is that carbohydrates increase insulin production and cause changes that actually lead to weight gain. The evidence of this is pretty overwhelming. After all, we've had 50 years of experience with low-fat, high-carbohydrate dieting that actually has led to a higher incidence of obesity. The low-carbohydrate diet encourages the consumption of higher fat and protein foods and forbids most carbohydrates. The higher fat foods tend to be metabolized slower and tend to cause a feeling of fullness, reducing the amount of food that's actually consumed. A lot of medical professionals warned that the long-term safety of high-protein diets could be questionable. They were concerned that these diets would lead to increased cholesterol and cause long-term cardiovascular problems. However, after 1 to 2 years of trials, they found that these diets actually lowered triglyceride and increased the good HDL cholesterol in comparison to the low-fat diets. What's interesting is the findings from these types of diets should also call into question the entire cholesterol theory, but so far that hasn't happened. Finally, there are the balanced diets. These include the Zone Diet, Weight Watchers, Nutrisystem, etc. These types of diets tend to control portion size along with forcing a balanced approach to the types of calories consumed. Weight Watchers in particular has been successful because of the peer group support system. The balanced diets are fairly successful for weight loss short term because these diets do reduce overall calorie consumption in a much more controlled way. But interestingly, after clinical trials comparing Weight Watchers, Atkins, Ornish, and Zone diets, it was found that none of them had any significant difference after a year. All of them were equally effective long term, each reducing weight by an average of 4.5 to 6.5 pounds per year. Let me repeat that. All of them were equally effective long term, each reducing weight by on average 4.5 to 6.5 pounds per year. Now, considering how much weight most people need to lose, most people become discouraged that on average they only lose about 6 pounds a year, and most people give up. Also, once most people complete their diets, they find that they slowly begin to experience weight gain again. Well, why is that? So far I've discussed the statistics behind the obesity epidemic, and I've discussed the most popular weight loss programs. Next I want to take a look at why weight loss programs fail and the primary cause that the medical community seems to ignore, because quite frankly, if they acknowledge what I'm going to share with you next, then their entire medical system for management of disease will also come into question. So why do weight loss programs fail, and what's the primary cause that the medical community seems to ignore? Well, before we can answer that, we need to take a look at why we're becoming so overweight in the first place. Now, according to all the experts, the simple reason is we consume more calories than we burn. As I mentioned earlier, from 1970 to 1990, we've increased our caloric intake by about 200 calories a day, which adds up to about an extra pound of body weight every 17 to 18 days. Now, couple that statistic with the fact that we're less active today than we were 30 years ago, and it's no wonder we are losing the battle of the bulge. So, what's driving us to consume more calories than ever before? Well, part of the problem can be blamed on the low-fat diet craze. In the 1960s through the 1970s, the Senate Select Committee on Nutrition and Human Needs laid out their guidelines on the American diet. After a lot of pressure from the food manufacturers, their recommendation of a diet low in fat and increased consumption of vegetables and carbohydrates from fruit and grains was released. By the 1980s, the food producers began to realize that low-fat dieting could become a major profit-making opportunity, and the industry began replacing fat with sugar and other carbohydrates in their processed foods. By the 1990s, there was just as many calories, and in fact in some cases more, in the low-fat products. This became known as the snack wells phenomena. Now, our intake of quick-burning carbohydrates has just gone right through the roof. Dr. Atkins was the first to take the opposite approach. As discussed previously, he cut the carbohydrate intake drastically and replaced those carbs with slow-burning fats and proteins. He encouraged eating more vegetables as well to provide adequate vitamin and mineral consumption. If lower carbohydrates were the answer, then why wasn't his program or the many other high-protein, low-carb weight loss programs similar to Atkins a success? Well, to gain an understanding, we need to take a look at the agriculture industry. Now, back around the turn of the last century, some researchers were looking at diets of laboratory rats. On average, the typical laboratory rat lived about 6 months. The purpose of the experiments was to try to find a way to get the rats to live longer, which increased the research value of the rats. One researcher decided to try cutting the carbohydrates that the rat consumed, but the researcher kept the nutrients, that is the vitamins, minerals, and amino acids, the same. Now, by cutting the carbs in half, the researcher in reality concentrated the amount of nutrients in each pellet. This concentrated pellet actually doubled the life expectancy of the subject rats. This led them to cut the carbs in half again, and the life expectancy of the rats once again doubled. In fact, it is precisely this theory that has led the veterinary science community to be able to double and even triple the healthy life expectancy of all breeds of animals. What they discovered was as long as the essential nutrients stayed the same, cutting the carbohydrates had a very positive effect on the animal. So Dr. Atkins was on the right track. He cut the carbohydrate intake and attempted to keep the nutritional value the same by increasing vegetable consumption. The key that was overlooked by Dr. Atkins and everyone else in the healthcare industry is this intake of the essential nutrients. The industry has always assumed that we get all the nutrients we need from the food we eat, but do we? The USDA came out with the USDA Nutrient Database comparing the nutritional content, which is the level of vitamins and minerals in certain common foods, between 1975 and 2004. Many vegetables appeared to contain lower levels of vitamins and minerals in 2004 than they did in 1975. It was reported that a random sample of USDA data on a dozen common vegetables showed that the calcium content had fallen on average 26.5%, vitamins A and C dropped 21.4% and 29.9%, and iron had plummeted on average 36.5%. Also, according to the British Food Journal, the concentrations of 8 essential minerals in 20 different fruits and vegetables in Great Britain had declined over the previous 50 years. They reported the average calcium content had dropped 19%, iron was down 22%, and potassium declined 14% for the 20 vegetables studied. So why are the nutrient levels of the foods dropping? Let's take a look at a report from the U.S. Senate in 1936. It stated, "Our physical well-being is more directly dependent upon minerals we take into our system than upon calories or vitamins or upon precise portions of starch, protein, or carbohydrates we consume." The document continued, "The alarming fact is that foods, fruits, and vegetables and grains that are now being raised on millions of acres of land that no longer contain enough of certain needed minerals, these foods are starving us. No matter how much of them we eat, no man today can eat enough fruits and vegetables to supply his system with the minerals he requires for perfect health because his stomach isn't big enough to hold them." According to these reports, today's fruits and vegetables just don't have the same nutritional value they had 60 years ago because the farmland that they are grown on lack the mineral content that we need. How does that affect obesity? Well, once again, let's look at the agriculture industry for an answer. A beef farmer, for instance, wants to get a cow fat as quick as possible to maximize his profits. Now, when a calf is born, the farmer gives it all known nutrients to assure that the calf will grow up as healthy as possible. Now, once the calf reaches the appropriate weight and age, the farmer then changes the feed he gives that calf. The new feed has fewer minerals than the original formula, and it also increases the calorie content significantly in the form of carbohydrates from grains. Sound familiar? Why did they cut the mineral content and not just up the carbohydrates? Because the agricultural industry knows that once the mineral content is cut, the cow's appetite becomes ferocious. It eats non-stop in an attempt to quench its mineral cravings, packing on the pounds, getting the animals to the slaughterhouses sooner. The agricultural industry isn't worried about the adverse effects from the reduced nutritional content of the animal feeds, since the animal will never live long enough to become ill. Now back to humans. The snack food industry understands this principle all too well. That's why they really pushed the government to endorse the low-fat, high-carbohydrate diet of the 1980s and 90s. These highly processed foods are depleted of all their nutritional value. The industry understands that our craving for these nutrients are uncontrollable. They add just enough salt or other nutrients, just like the agricultural industry did, to cause our bodies to crave their food, and we eat non-stop. Think about it. One of the companies was so bold that they included in their advertising that you couldn't eat just one. So we're living a nutrient-depleted lifestyle. Because of the low-fat diets the experts have been pushing over the years, we've been eating too many carbohydrates. This combination of nutrient cravings and high-carbohydrate dieting has led to an obesity epidemic. We then turn to all sorts of diets, none of which address the first part of the problem, the nutrition deficiencies. We lose weight, Then we put it back on again with a vengeance and repeat the process over and over again. Now, this combination of events has caused our bodies into a feast and famine phenomena. When we continuously repeat the cycle of losing weight by dieting and then regaining that weight over and over again without properly nutrifying our bodies, we experience a feast and famine phenomena. What then can we do to break the cycle and manage a healthy weight once and for all? Well, throughout the history of humankind, we've gone through cycles of feast and famine. As a result, our bodies have become very good at converting excess carbohydrates into fat to store up and use during those times of famine. A couple things have complicated this cycle. The human biological system was built to hunger for fat. As we consume fat and fatty foods, the body tells itself that it's getting the appropriate nutrition it needs, and the body shuts down the hunger reflex and we stop eating. As we've been encouraged by the medical community to decrease our fat consumption, we've actually caused our bodies to physiologically adapt our metabolism. The body reduces the amount of calories needed to function during times of famine and becomes more efficient during times of feast at converting other sources of energy, especially from carbohydrates, into fat stores for survival during famine. In addition, because of the reduced fat consumption, it also triggers our bodies to crave fatty, sugary foods in order to satisfy the need for fat, making dieting even more difficult. What's really interesting, as we continue to repeat this feast and famine form of dieting, with every feast, the body gets better at its ability to store fat, and the amount of fat stored is actually increased. Then with every famine or diet, the body gets better at conserving the fat stores to last through the famine until the next feast. Each time you go back on a low-calorie diet and then off, you lose and gain fat, and each time you lose less weight and gain more fat as the body gets better at adapting. So, is it even possible to break the cycle and permanently lose the weight? Well, the short answer is yes, but we'll only have success if we solve the two issues driving this epidemic. First, that insatiable craving for the nutrition that we're missing in our diet, and second, the feast and famine cycle. Fortunately for us, we do have the answer to both of these problems. So, how do we deal with the insatiable cravings? First of all, we have to let go of the notion that we must consume a diet low in fat and high in grains and fruit. Because of the feast and famine phenomena, these high carbohydrate foods are quickly converted by the body into fat in preparation for the next famine. As Dr. Atkins correctly theorized, the high protein and high fat foods have the ability to slow down this process, causing a feeling of fullness sooner. But where this hypothesis fails is because of the lack of the essential minerals in the foods we eat, our bodies do not turn off our craving for the salty foods. Let's turn once again to the agriculture industry for a clue at why we have such a high desire for salty foods. Now, many times on a farm, one will see an animal chewing on a fence post, or the buckboard, or a carriage, or even the door of its stall. The reason it's chewing on these items is this is precisely the spot the farmer's hands touch many times throughout the day. Every time he touches these spots, his sweaty hands leave a salty residue behind. When the farmer sees his animal chewing on these spots, he knows that his animal is lacking enough minerals in its diet, so the farmer supplements the diet by placing a salt block in the pasture for the animal to lick. Now, the salt block isn't just table salt as we know it. It's actually a block of all the mineral salts the animal needs. Now, how do we accomplish the same thing ourselves? Well, we know through the research of Dr. Joel Wallach that humans need 90 essential nutrients for optimal health. Of these 90 nutrients, 60 of them are minerals. We also know that the most absorbable and bioavailable minerals are the plant-derived colloidal minerals. These only come from plant material, but because of the current farming practices, we know that the soils are lacking these essential nutrients. And as the Senate document stated, because of these deficiencies in our soils, our foods are also lacking these minerals. The only way, therefore, to provide ourselves with these minerals is through supplementation. So the first key to successful weight management program is to provide our body with all 90 known essential nutrients, especially the 60 minerals, and as the agricultural industry discovered, at doses appropriate to one's body weight. By nutrifying the body at this level, the insatiable cravings will stop, ending the feedlot style consumption of calories that drive the obesity epidemic. So all I need to do then is take a multivitamin, correct? Well, unfortunately, traditional multivitamin supplements aren't enough for a few reasons. First of all, the U.S. government's adapted a standard of measurement for vitamin supplements based on what they call the recommended daily allowance. This establishes the minimum required levels of the various nutrients that the body needs to survive. These are not the amounts required to thrive. Another thing wrong with the RDA is it's based on the average adult human. And who is average anymore? For some reason, the medical community has adopted this one-size-fits-all approach. The veterinary industry discovered decades ago through Dr. Wallach's research that the larger an animal is, the larger amounts of nutrients are also needed to thrive. The same principle would therefore apply to humans. The second problem with traditional multivitamin supplements is they do not contain all the 90 essential nutrients we need. Specifically, they never contain all 60 of the essential minerals. It's the lack of these essential minerals that's actually driving our feedlot desire to eat. We're unconsciously looking for these salty tasting minerals, so we devour everything in sight that has a salty taste. The third problem is the minerals that are provided are most often in a form of metallic minerals. These type of minerals are only about 8 to 12% absorbed into the body. Let me give you an example. 1,000 milligrams of calcium lactate contains 140 milligrams of elemental calcium. With a 10% absorbability, your body only absorbs 14 milligrams. So in order to get that 1,000 milligrams of calcium from a calcium lactate, you would have to consume more than 71,000 milligrams of calcium lactate daily, which would be 142 50 milligram tablets every day. Bet your physician never told you that. Physicians and others involved with our healthcare system assume that if we eat a balanced diet, we're getting all the nutrients we need. In fact, many of them believe that supplementation just causes us to have expensive urine. Now, as I've noted previously, our food supply is drastically deficient in its nutritional value. Also, the way we mass produce our foods, we're processing many of the remaining nutrients out. Put all this together, and it becomes easy to see that there's no way we're getting the nutrients we need even to survive, much less to thrive. And this is precisely what is causing many of the medical problems that we're seeing today. And this is what led me into studying the role of the 90 essential nutrients in our overall wellness. It becomes mandatory that we supplement with all 90 essential nutrients according to body weight, and that this supplementation must come from highly absorbable sources to make it more economical. So we can deal with feedlot syndrome with the 90 essential nutrients. How about the feast and famine phenomenon? Overcoming the feast and famine phenomenon is a little more problematic. Once again, through Dr. Wallach's research, we developed a complete weight loss program that uses a very restricted calorie diet for 3 to 6 week cycles, depending on the desired weight loss goal, followed by a resting period. During these 3 to 6 week cycles, it's mandatory that we supplement with all 90 essential nutrients according to body weight to prevent the body from going into famine mode. To overcome the body's reluctance to release the adipose fat during the reduced calorie phase, Dr. Wallach's team has developed an amino acid protein complex. It causes the body to utilize adipose fat first for the calories or energy that it needs, and aids in resetting the feast and famine cycle to a more manageable state. At this point, we've now discussed the statistics behind the obesity epidemic. We've explored our diets, what's good and what's bad. We've looked into the feedlot and the fast and famine phenomenons that are driving this obesity problems, and we've looked at ways to overcome both of these phenomenons. Now, I'll lay out a plan of action to lose weight effectively and keep that weight off permanently. For 50 years now, we followed the advice of the medical establishment regarding the low-fat, whole-grain diet that's led us to become the most obese and unhealthy population America has ever been. I'm here to talk with you today about your final weight loss solution, ASAP. The program is the as slim as possible, as soon as possible weight management program developed by Longevity. Everything we do at Longevity is based on high-quality nutrition. The company was founded by a very good friend of mine that I've mentioned several times throughout this discussion. Dr. Joe Wallach has revolutionized the wellness industry with his 90 for Life Essential Nutrition program. Dr. Wallach has written 14 books on wellness and nutrition, one of which is in the Smithsonian as a national treasure. He's a Nobel Prize nominee and a global award winner for his research in diseases. He has an audio and book on nutrition that's the #1 seller worldwide with over 156 million copies in circulation. He's worked with professional athletes like Theo Ratliff, where he extended Theo's career by almost 10 years just by following Dr. Wallach's nutritional protocols. He also is currently working with the Denver Nuggets and many other athletes, and his protocols are now even being researched by Clemson University. Why am I telling you all this? Because Dr. Wallach's research and results have caused me to shift my career from the mainstream medical establishment into the wellness industry, where I can actually, for the first time in my career, help people get better, not just manage their medical conditions with medications. Think about it. The mainstream medical establishment just gives you a medication to manage the symptoms of your conditions. They don't actually teach you or show you how to overcome them. We're on the forefront of anything to do with wellness. In fact, what we're doing is creating a healthy lifestyle for everyone. You notice I didn't say a healthy life, because what we do is create a healthy lifestyle, a lifestyle that encompasses physical wellness, emotional wellness, and financial wellness for those that are willing to help us get this message out. For 40 years, Dr. Wallach has been teaching the same message: 90 essential nutrients a day, every day, to promote and support better health. In fact, Dr. Wallach's famous statement is, "It's not what you eat that kills you, it's what you don't eat." As I showed previously in our discussion, this lack of the 90 essential nutrients is precisely what's driving this obesity epidemic. We're eating empty calories trying to nutrify our body. Since we're not getting that nutrition in our food, we're acting just like cattle in the feedlot. We're eating anything in sight and getting nowhere fast except fat. Remember, all the way back in 1936, the federal government warned that the minerals weren't in the soils and it was causing the crops to be minerally depleted. In 2004, the federal government confirmed it once again when they showed that the nutritional content of foods have continued to decline since 1974. Linus Pauling, a two-time Nobel Prize winner, stated that every disease known to man is in one way or another related to mineral deficiencies in the diet, and today we're seeing what he warned about firsthand. Dr. Wallach proved this hypothesis with his landmark research with the National Institutes of Health, where he showed that most every disease or physical medical challenge is a result of mineral deficiencies, including obesity. In fact, because of Dr. Wallach's research, the agricultural industry has eliminated hundreds of diseases in animals that still plague humans today, just by supplementing the animals with proper amounts of nutrients in their feed based on their body weights. As I mentioned before, Dr. Wallach and his team have developed a complete weight management system that addresses the nutrient deficiencies that are driving obesity and the fast and famine phenomena that make it nearly impossible to manage a healthy weight. The program consists of Dr. Wallach's 90 for Life nutrition program, coupled with an amino acid protein complex called ASAP. There are 3 phases to complete cycle through this program. The length of each cycle, 26 days or 43 days, is determined by the weight loss goal. For people that need to lose more than 50 pounds, it may take 2 or more cycles through the program. However, it's a very simple program. During the first phase, you begin using the ASAP drops and the 90 for Life nutritional supplements, but you eat whatever you want. It's encouraged, in fact, that you actually eat those foods that you're going to miss during the calorie restricted phase. The second phase we call the healthy weight loss menu days. During this phase, you continue to use the ASAP drops and the 90 for Life supplements, but you also follow a very calorie restricted menu. In the final phase, you continue a healthy maintenance menu and the 90 for Life supplements, but at this point, the ASAP drops are no longer used. Now, for those that need to lose less than 50 pounds, most will have achieved their goal at this point. Anyone that needs to lose more will repeat the cycle once again from step 1. Once you've completed the program and reached your desired body weight, you will have reset the feast and famine phenomenon. The key here to keeping the weight off and overcoming the feedlot phenomenon permanently is to continue the 90 for Life nutritional supplements, because, as we discussed previously, it's precisely the lack of these 90 essential nutrients that cause the weight gain in the first place. I'm excited about this program. I've literally heard from dozens of people that have had tremendous success with it and have posted their testimonials on the website. Okay, folks, this has been a very interesting journey for me. In doing this research, I've learned so much about the obesity epidemic, much of which really makes me angry at the medical establishment. I believe strongly that their research into finding drugs to control every medical condition and their total disregard for nutritional solutions is exactly what led to their low-fat, high-grain diet theory. They've aggressively promoted this theory as fact for the past 50 years, which has now driven us to become the most obese population we've ever seen in human history. The medical establishment has willfully disregarded the research coming from other disciplines like the veterinary industry and the naturopathic medicine regarding the role that total, complete nutrition plays in overall health and wellness. because of their arrogance, their superiority complex, and protection of their turf, all to the detriment of all of us, but especially to Generation Y, we are now looking at the first generation of Americans that are expected to die at younger ages than their parents. This is precisely why I've teamed up with Dr. Wallach, and I believe wholeheartedly that we can reverse the many medical conditions that are plaguing Americans today. If you have 5 pounds, 30 pounds, or even 100 pounds or more to lose, if you have those unwanted inches that you can never seem to get rid of, if you suffer from diabetes or metabolic syndrome or one of the other medical conditions related to obesity, then contact us. Also, if you're as concerned as I am and you'd like to join the Healthy Lifestyle Champions to get this message out, Dr. Wallach and his company rewards his associates very well with one of the best compensation plans in the industry. Become a Healthy Lifestyle Champion today. Take back your health and take control of your wealth with your own healthy lifestyle business. After all, what good is your health if you have no wealth? And what good is your wealth if you have poor health? To find out more about the ASAP program or how to become a Healthy Lifestyle Champion, visit healthylifestylechampions.com and click on the ASAP link on the right, or call my cell phone number, 502-410-DIET. That's 502-410-3438. That's healthylifestylechampions.com, and click on the ASAP link or call my phone number 502-410-3438.